community, love, service, and what comes out of us. And what comes out of us depends on what's in us. I looked up something, as I often do when I'm looking around for sermon ideas, and was wondering, okay, if we are supposed to be salt, I wonder how much salt is in us. And I looked it up, and they claim that for a 50-kilogram person, 200 grams, about 200 grams of sodium chloride. I don't know anyone over the age of 12 who is 50 kilograms. That's 110 pounds. Maybe some of you are, so I upped it a little bit. And I'm just going to pass this around. These are salt crystals from Bonaire, an island off the coast of Venezuela that is owned by the Dutch. And there is a long-time natural salt industry there. Now, of course, there's also remnants and a large history of slaves making salt in this place. So there's a real, these crystals are from this place. And I just want you to feel the weight. And if you can't get it to the next pew, it's okay to zip it up first, give it a toss. And if it hits the ground, it's okay. Okay, it's not, you know, great Irish crystal, it's salt. But I just want you to get a sense of how much salt is in your body, how much sodium chloride is in your body, so that you can feel it in your hand, so that you can give it kind of a weight. Now, light, of course, we cannot measure, at least, you know, at home using our usual ways. You physicists, you go ahead, measure the light, and please get back to us, because I don't know how much light we have. But I know it's way more than we can ask or imagine. And this salt that is in us, when we start to get outside of ourselves and worry about how we're being seen, then maybe salt begins to get rubbed into our wounds, or maybe we start to rub salt into the wounds of others. And maybe when we get too concerned about what other folks think of how we are doing faith-wise, church-wise, denomination-wise, we get so worried about light that we start going through life with our high beams on and other people are blinded. That's not the kind of light we're supposed to shine. That's not the amount of salt we're supposed to rub in. But each one of us, feel it in your hand, open up that thing, pull out the crystals, those unusual shapes of those salt crystals, and think about it. Think about it in your life. Salt often comes up as a metaphor when I am away from home. Indeed, I was on a scuba trip in Bonaire 4 years ago, when I wound up with those salt crystals. And when I was away a few weeks ago, we noticed that at breakfast, there were all of these beautiful pastries and breads and, you know, just this festival of carbohydrates, which, of course, I should probably, you know, get behind it. But it wasn't hard to do, to refuse them, because they all tasted the same. It was the strangest thing. To me, to my American taste buds, they all tasted absolutely the same. Well, that's weird. You know, this little bun, this bit of bread, even the cookies tasted like the bread did. And finally, I tried a little salt on it, just a tiny bit. And the bread tasted like bread. The sweet roll tasted sweet. The cookie, yeah, breakfast cookies, don't judge. They tasted, it tasted like what it was supposed to be. Now, I recognize this may have been my American taste buds, okay? Maybe I'm not able to pick up the subtle amounts of salt that are used in a culture that is surrounded by salt water. But it made me think, just that little tiny bit of salt brings out what the essence of that particular thing or person is. Now, Jesus is also saying in this gospel, and he's saying you, when he says you, he's using the all y'all form of you, okay? Everybody, not just his disciples, but everybody. Anyone who can hear him. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. It is you that possesses what God has put in there to bring out the best essential nature of the community, to show light in spaces that may seem full of shadows. Again, travel is when salt often shows up for me and my family. In 1994, I believe it was, my sister was flying from Pittsburgh to Portland, Maine. Laura hated to fly. Ever since our uncle, we had pilots in the family, and ever since Uncle Ted had done the loop-de-loops in a little plane, yeah, she was done. That happened when she was like 12, okay? I was 6, I didn't know what was going on, but she was like, I'm done flying. And she just always had to white knuckle it. She had to fly home. Flying from Pittsburgh to Logan Airport was really bumpy. Really, really, really bumpy. Thunderstorm, all this, and she was just in horrible shape and was not at all sure that she could get on the next plane. But if she wanted to get home, she had to. I mean, you can take a bus from Boston, it was 4 hours, and she was just feeling, as she's getting off the plane, just feeling totally trapped. She walks out the plane, and you know, there's the line of people waiting to get on the plane. And all of a sudden, this man just steps out in front of her. Elderly, well-dressed, African-American man. She said he was tall, he had on a hat, and he looked like, you know, he was dressed to travel. And he steps out right in front of her and took her hands and said, "You're having a rough time, aren't you?" Well, she was stunned, totally, as any of us would be. And he said, "Can we sit for a minute?" And she, you know, she's gray, you know, and just so upset. And sat her down, said, "Do you mind if I pray with you?" He did it. And my sister was not a real, like, organized religion kind of person. And he just sat and prayed with her, put his hand on her head, and asked God for, you know, just bringing forth the love and delight and strength that he had put in her. And then he just got up and said, "Have a nice day." And she said, "Thank you," and he just got onto the plane. It shook her, of course, to her core. And then it stilled her to her core. Because this man had recognized he wasn't just the light of his church or the light of his town or the salt of this little spot of earth. Somehow, in all of this, he had learned that that also meant being the light of Logan Airport, the salt of Boston. And she got on the next plane, and it was a smooth ride. It was a smooth ride. As we hear this gospel this morning, let's just try to get the simple part, shall we? Feel that weight of salt in your hands. Feel the sun coming onto your face. Give that wherever you are. Because you know what? We're called to be a peculiar people, and we sometimes forget that. But let us be peculiar in love and in light and in strength and in giving God's love wherever we find ourselves, so that all may be knowing that God's love is essential and there for them.